and see the screen. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate your time. It's we know everybody's busy and it's not always easy to spare some time for this kind of thing. So again, we appreciate that, and we'll do our best to get through this. We won't rush, but we won't try to not keep you here all night. And we're gonna do our best to get through all of our presentation plus Q&A, which I expect will be the bulk of our time here. I see many of you who have been at the Board of Selectmen Zoom hearings and have seen our presentation. So for that, I apologize. But for those who haven't, my name is Jim Lambert. I'm the Managing Director for Wood Partners Boston office, which is located in Lexington. And so we're going to present tonight our proposed project, Alton Easterly Valley, located at 580 Main Street, as you guys most know as Bolton Office Park. Mark, if you would just move to the next slide, I'm going to give everybody an overview of Wood Partners to start with. So just real quick to back up for everybody, I'm going to run through this presentation from start to finish. It's largely the same presentation, the evolution of the presentation. Those of you who have joined the Board of Selectmen meetings have seen, but we have updated it for some of the slides for the most recent plan that was put in as part of the application the other day. So most of this has been shown before, but we're going to go through it in full, and then we're going to open it up for Q&A. So real quick, Wood Partners, I'm not going to read this slide in full. Just the general overview is we are a multifamily focused real estate development company. We're based out of Atlanta, been around since 1997. We've been in Massachusetts for about 10, 12 years now, at least, and going. We're a very large organization with 20 offices around the country, but also very localized. Each office in their particular market, is a market expert and is somebody who is from and have worked in that market for a long, long time, including myself and my team who's on with us tonight. What you guys care about most is what we've done locally here in Massachusetts and Greater Boston. The list that you see below on the lower part of the screen is our projects that we have built or are building in Massachusetts alone. It represents well over 3,000 units. As you can see, and you'll see in the next slide on the map, we have built projects all over the state, from 495 in like-kind locations to Bolton, all the way into Cambridge and Somerville. We're currently developing projects in Wayland and in Somerville as we speak. And then the two most recent developments that we've completed prior to those were in Stoneham and Framingham. And we have a couple of case studies to show you as well, which we'll get to in a minute. Just flip back to the map real quick, Mark. So as I mentioned, this is just another visual of the projects that we have developed throughout the state. As you can see, as north as Andover, and as far south on 495 is Franklin, as well as Hopkinton. So we have a good bit of experience, not only in the greater Boston market, but specifically on the 495 corridor. And I will add before we go into these case studies that, and I think this is important for folks to hear, that Wood Partners is not only a developer, but we're also a general contractor, and we're a property management company. So all of those functions happen under our umbrella. So we don't turn the keys over to a third-party GC. We do that ourselves. So a lot of the folks that you see on here are involved in the project day to day, from this phase all the way through construction and then into lease up, where we're also the property management company and handle the lease up and the day-to-day management. And I think that's important because we live with it from start to finish. Okay, so the case study that you see in front of you, this is called Alton at the Fells. This is a recent development that we completed in Stoneham, 261 units, a mix of 4- and 5-story wood frame with surface parking. It was completed in 2020, and we have recently reached stabilization on the project at lightning speed. This project came out very well received by the community and the residents who wanted to live there. It's about 8 miles north of Boston, but it feels like you're in another world because you're near the Fells. And it just came out really beautiful, and people have loved it. As you can see, great outdoor amenity space in the lower right-hand corner. The left-hand corner, you can see the distance to Boston, just a great combination of sort of suburban oasis and close into the city. Mark, if you'd flip, please. So these are some more photos of the property. On the top left-hand corner, again, outdoor amenity space, fire pits, and seating. And there's a beautiful outdoor kitchen that you can't see in the shot as well, right behind on our side of the fire pits. And then some interior shots. One of the amenity space in the top right-hand corner with a resident lounge with a pool table and fireplace as well. And then a couple of photos of the units themselves. As you can see, hard surface flooring. What you can't probably tell is those are beautiful quartz countertops, very nice shaker style cabinets, stainless steel appliances, really top of the line Class A development, which is what we're proposing to do here as well in Bolton. Mark, if you go. So this next one, this is called Alton Easterly, or was called Alton Easterly. The name has since changed. Development that we did under the 40B program in Walpole. This was completed in 2018, a little bit smaller scale, 157 units, 3 buildings, also 4-story wood frame with surface parking and garages looping the outside ring of the site. A little bit of a bold accent paint there on the amenity space, as you can see, but again, property that came out very, very well, was built in a relatively dense single family neighborhood, which a lot of folks were concerned with, but ended up being the process went smoothly as it could have. I think it's minimal disruption as there could have been, and turned out to have a beautiful property in that neighborhood. Some more shots of that property. Again, patio pool area in the top left-hand corner, and then some more amenity shots on the inside, pool area, pool table area with lounge, a couple of units. Again, quartz countertops, again, stainless steel appliances, hard surface, flooring, and shaker style cabinets, actually very similar to what we did in Stoneham. So those are a couple of, we just thought it was important to show you a couple of options of what we have built, which largely reflects what we will build and intend to build here in Bolton, but it just reflects the quality that we developed. So folks have a sense of what we're talking about here. I'd like to introduce the project team. I won't name everybody by names, but when they get a chance to speak tonight, they can introduce themselves. High level, obviously, again, Wood Partners, developer, general contractor, and property management firm. Architect is Market Square Architects. Civil engineer, Allen and Major Associates. Landscape architect, Grady Consulting. And then our legal on our zoning side, Goulston and Stores. And these are folks that we've worked with for many years, have a lot of experience in the industry, and are considered best in class. Thanks. All right, on to the property overview. So we'll show you the visuals in a minute, but I'll run down the basics of what we're proposing here. So as I noted, this is part of the Bolton Office Park. It's about a 32-acre property after the subdivision, and then located at 580 Main Street, as I've already noted. It's the rear of the existing office site. One of the office pods that you'll see in a visual in a minute is going to come down. It's a 2-pod office building currently, and one of those will go away to make room for the development, and one will stay. So there'll be a nice mix of office and residential in the development going forward, although separately owned. We'll be developing approximately 31 acres of the site, so a lot of the site will remain untouched. The office building is currently 110,000 square feet, 25% leased, and again, approximately half of that building will come down to make way for this development. We are proposing 229 apartment homes. They'll be located in 4 traditionally inspired New England style residential buildings, as well as a standalone amenity building, freestanding garages, and then a mail and package building as well, which we all know is hugely important these days. All the buildings will be 3 stories or less. We really wanted to try to fit within the aesthetic and the context of the town of Bolton, as well as within the ability of the fire and safety to fight fire and treat emergencies at the property. And so, going with 3 stories there was the appropriate thing to do. This is a 40B project through the LIP program. So 25% of the units will be designated as affordable for those earning up to 80% of the area median income. We'll talk about this more in a few minutes. But most importantly, I think folks need to understand with the way the program works is that even though 25% of the units are designated for affordability, all 229 units in the property will count for the town of Bolton towards their subsidized housing inventory. So this will push the town of Bolton, which we'll talk about again in a few minutes, well over their 40B cap. As you've seen in a couple of the case study pictures, the property will feature a full suite of amenities, state-of-the-art fitness center, resident lounge or lounges, business center, work from home stations, interior courtyards that feature a pool, outdoor fireplaces, dining areas, and grills. Again, as you saw in some of the photos, it'll be like kind. Okay, I'm going to walk you through the unit mix and the parking count. So this is a mix of 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and 3-bedroom units. We have a total of 88 1-bedrooms, 117 2-bedrooms, some of those with 1 bath, some of them with 2 baths, most of those with 2. And then there's 24 3-bedroom, 2 baths as well, as required by the 40B program. Parking, we've got a sufficient amount of parking for the size of the project. We have 357 surface at-grade parking spaces that are basically uncovered spaces, and then 28 private garage spaces, which have been very well received with residents at our other properties. Total of 385 spaces, a 1.68 parking ratio, which we think is very healthy for a development of this size. Here's an aerial shot of the site. I know most of you know it, but this is a pretty good idea. It gives you the sense of where you are located on 117 with the association of 495. The sort of the blurred dotted area gives you a good depiction of the site itself, although the lines are certainly not drawn with the ins and outs that are actually going to exist. But it gives you a good idea of that second office pod that will be demolished to make way for the development. So I think that's a helpful aerial. A couple of the site photos as it exists today, going from the top on the left, that's the just the entry drive from the beginning coming off of 117. A little bit further into the site with a view below that of the existing office building on the lower left, excuse me. And then on the top right, a view of from the parking lot, which is where the bulk of the development will happen, the existing parking lot today, looking back at Bolton Country Manor. And then a shot that I believe is looking sort of east from the parking lot as well. Again, just a large surface area of parking underutilized that we're intending to redevelop in the back. Mark? So I'm going to let I think Phil Cordero from Allen & Majors, our civil engineer, is going to walk you through the site plan. This is a really nice visual, I think, a colored site plan that gives you a great idea of how the site lays out. So Phil, if you'd introduce yourself and take a minute and walk folks through the site plan, that'd be appreciated. And Mark, I think you have to unmute Phil.
Thank you. There it goes. I just had to request to be unmuted. Thank you, Jim. For the record, Phil Cordero from Allen & Major Associates, and I'm the branch manager of our Lakeville division. And as Mr. Lambert mentioned, we've had the pleasure of working with Wood Partners on a number of projects throughout Massachusetts, throughout our few offices that we have, Bolton, Woburn, and Manchester, New Hampshire. So we're happy to work with them here. We're confident in their abilities to develop the site and obviously the program that they're putting forward here. What our job here to do is to engineer the site program elements that they have put forth. And I won't go over the details of the number of units and bedrooms, et cetera. They've already encountered that. What I would like to do is highlight, for the benefit of those in attendance here this evening, is the challenges that were faced relative to this site. And I'll use some annotation tools just to frame what I'm referring to. Jim mentioned that we are on Route 117, which is Main Street in Bolton. Everybody's familiar with that. It's really the main thoroughfare. And this site is ideal in that it's proximate to Route 495, which is just off the images here. And the connectivity to the highway and Main Street is certainly very desirable for a multifamily locus. This site is burdened by a number of challenges. And Jim already mentioned that it's an office complex. It's very much underutilized. It is very large expanses of parking fields that are going unused. And really the occurrences in the last, I guess, 16, 18 months have really exacerbated the office situation here in Massachusetts. And this is really a revitalization of some of those underutilized areas. So what you'll notice on the aerial that's here is the red outline denotes the approximate site boundaries for the master site. And then we have an interior property boundary, which represents the division of land. The area that's encompassed now on the screen will be the remaining area of Bolton Office Park. And you can see that the module of the building, approximately 55,000 square feet of the existing building, will remain, and appropriate parking to support the office that's there. Now, those familiar with the site, possibly from driving by it, will recognize that there is a large area in the front of the site. This is part of the fire and stormwater pond system for the existing property. There's an additional one that's located at the rear of the site. It's just off frame here in terms of the image. And then on the, I guess it's the easterly side of our site, we are bounded by Great Brook, which is a river waterway system that really implements the statutes of the Wetlands Protection Act and requires coordination with the Bolton Conservation Commission. And then adjacent to us on the westerly side, as Jim pointed out, is Country Manor, the senior living facility that was constructed several years ago. So we've really bracketed ourselves in terms of the developable area that we have on the site. So what Wood Partners intends to do, and we've assisted them with some of the engineering efforts on this, is to reconstruct the site driveway that's coming into the office park at present. And immediately upon entry to the site for the developed area, you'll notice areas on either side of our site driveway that will be utilized for our wastewater system. And those familiar with Bolton obviously know you have no centralized sewer systems. So we are required to make sure we manage our sewer and sanitary waste on site. And we'll coordinate that with Mass DEP as the project commences. As you enter further into the site, you will pass the existing driveway to Bolton Office Park. That driveway will remain and continue to service the office park. And then as you continue on, Jim mentioned we're proposing a mail center, which will be a dedicated area that the residents can come in either on their way home or on their way out during the day or to work, retrieve their mail and packages with dedicated facilities available for UPS, Amazon, FedEx, whatever the delivery services are. Bolton Country Manor is off to the right side as you face this image. Excuse me, thank you. The clubhouse is the first structure that you see on the left side of the site, and that's the welcoming point to the site. That's the amenity focus area for the site. That'll be well appointed with landscaping, decorative features, et cetera. And the landscape architect can speak about that in greater detail as we move forward. But it's really a point of entry statement. And it reinforces for everybody coming into the site, whether you're a resident or a visitor, just really the quality of the development that you're entering into that's put forth. We have 4 primary buildings, as Jim outlined, that house the 229 units. And those are a variety of different units that we can talk about later in terms of architectural style, number of bedrooms, et cetera. But each of those buildings provides a central courtyard area for green space. And that's for the residents to enjoy the outside area. There's certainly ample surface parking shown around each of these buildings to provide adequate accommodations and the 1.68, 1.69 parking ratio per unit on site to make sure it's parked. The darker green structures that you see flanking the perimeter, those are detached amenity-based garages. And individuals can lease out garage spaces to have an enclosed carport, fully enclosed garage space that accompanies their living space. The site is fully navigatable, for fire apparatus. And as Jim outlined, we've been in discussion with the Bolton Fire Department in terms of what their equipment is, what it can handle, how they can operate and navigate the site. So certainly in addition to the heights of the building, we want to make sure that the site is entirely traversable by emergency vehicles. And this site meets those requirements. we will certainly have a water system on site with hydrants that are capable of being drawn off of for the fire department. And that's very important to us from a development perspective. Now, as we delve deeper into the site, what you may notice is we have some rings around the site. And I want to draw everybody's attention to those areas because those are developmental restriction zones based on drinking water supply. And again, akin to the sewer system, which you do not have in Bolton, you obviously don't have a municipal water system either. So in this case, we will seek permission from DEP to provide private drinking water supply wells for the residents here. And these circled areas provide the minimal required radii of protected zone for wells. Now, these wells are located entirely on the property, as are these radiuses. They are cut off on the sheet, but they are located entirely on the property. And the reason for that is to make sure that the applicant is in full control of the area that is influenced by the well, but also that the wells that we're proposing do not affect any neighboring wells. So any wells adjacent to Bolton Manor or residents that may be on the backside, even though we don't have any here because of our wetland resource areas, these wells are required to stay entirely on site so we don't have off-site effects. And we'll permit those with Mass DEP. And then lastly, we'll touch upon again repetitively the stormwater pond, the fire pond that's at the rear of the site, and that will remain. And our requirements to make sure that we permit with the Bolton Conservation Commission under the Wetlands Protection Act. The Bolton bylaw, the Bolton Conservation bylaw, puts forth requirements for us to follow in terms of developmental restrictions, proximities, guidance, erosion control, et cetera, to make sure this is also an environmentally sensitive project. And we'll pursue that with them as permitting commences. What we'll put forth under the premise of those permits is no effect on Great Brook. So by protection, make sure there's no degradation to Great Brook, to the waterways, to the adjacent bordering wetland resource areas, as well as floodplain that exists around this area. And then as a final wrap up, what I would want to draw everybody's final attention to is one of really the benefits that we are going to have in this project. Most do look at the buildings, they look at the surface parking, those are necessary components. But because of the radius elements for the wells, and I'll just highlight this one on the left side of the screen, this large green zone here is going to be reclaimed area. So this is currently paved zone on site, and we're going to reclaim that and bring that back to a green state, which provides inherent benefit to our wetland resource areas adjacent to us, Great Brook, et cetera. And we want to make sure we're utilizing only the minimum extent of pavement that we need here and not really result in what some might expect or connect up as an affordable housing development that is very urban. We're certainly not looking to create an urban feel here, and we'll only provide the parking that we need. And wherever we don't have parking, we'll provide complemented landscaping. So there are escape areas for the residents here. And really using the landscape. And again, I'm treading into the landscape architect's territory, so I'll go lightly and give it back to him. But to use those landscape areas to soften up the building, soften up the development, and it really knocks down what some might think of an affordable housing complex. So that's where we are on the site planning side, and we have lots of permitting to go. Lots of coordination at the local level with various boards, departments, et cetera. But it's a project that is certainly constructible. It's engineering feasible. While we don't have stormwater shown on this plan necessarily, our stormwater approach here will be underground. So we're also not looking to provide a very large surface area basin, which some might consider not aesthetically pleasing to the eye. So we'll bury that under this site and really make sure we can keep that aesthetic appeal as part of the site plan development. So I'll turn it back over to Jim, and then I'll happily answer any questions the group has as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Sorry, I got muted there. Appreciate that great explanation of the site plan. Folks, this is just another view. We'll go through this one quickly. This is just another view from the other direction of the site plan with a little bit of landscape shown, as Phil alluded to. Obviously, this is a conceptual plan, a lot of work to be done. So this is our, a first draft at some landscaping aside from the major green areas that Phil showed in the zone 1. So Mark, if you could flip, please. So we have a couple of slides here that are, again, very conceptual, but showing the building elevations. Mike Tulipani, who is our design manager here at Wood Partners, is just going to speak to the aesthetic of the buildings as we have in mind at this early stage briefly.
Sure. Thank you, everyone. My name is Mike Tulipani. And on this slide are 2 images that represent building 1. Just so as if you recall, the site plan had 2 larger buildings and 2 smaller buildings. This represents one of the larger buildings, but all the buildings are 3 stories. And the drawing at the top is a typical section, which is meant to be a cut through the building, so you can see the overall shape of the building and the relationship and the floors. You can see the first floor, second floor, third floor. Each building has a pitched roof. Building 1 and 2 have a notch cut out in the roof, which is looks like a white triangle on the screen, where we will be mounting the condensing units for the air conditioning and heating. So they will be facing the courtyard, so they will be not visible from anybody, on the front of the site. The elevation, this is just a typical elevation. Keep in mind, this is, again, very conceptual first pass at it. We're really trying to break down the scale of these buildings. You can see there's different roof lines, pitches, some shed roofs. We are providing all of the units with an exterior balcony, as you can see, which actually helps break up the facades of the buildings and the elevations of the buildings to give it some depth and shadow. The materials are going to be asphalt shingle roof, which is typical residential roof, and a variety of lap siding, which is going to be fiber cement. We'll use a couple different widths to get some variety and emphasis on certain locations and less emphasis on other locations. We use different colors, textures to break it up. You can see at the bottom, there's balconies sort of at the ends of each building and a couple in the middle. Again, we played with the roof lines a little bit to create a sort of a traditional approach to this building. And we will pick up on the details of Bolton. We've all driven through Bolton and taken lots of photographs of the existing buildings. And we will certainly pick up on the architecture of Bolton as we develop these further. This is an elevation of building 3, which is the 36 unit building in the back. Again, similar concepts here. The only difference on this building is that the style of the building is slightly different internal, where there's 3 separate entries. One is directly in the middle of the elevation in the bottom, and then there's one to the far left and one to the far right. So in these buildings, there's each entry has a cluster of 4 units per floor. So it creates a really small scale of the structure of the building inside the building. But we're using similar roof lines, dormers, materials, etc. And again, it's 3 stories, as you can see in the section above.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate that. So Phil did a really good job of walking us through the utilities that we have and don't have. So Mark, just flip back real quick. I'll just quickly, one of the real challenges to the site is the fact that Bolton does not have public water and sewer. That is becoming slightly more normal in the market in our industry as development has spread out to 495 and past. But historically, that is, it's really unusual for developments of this scale to produce their own water and sewer on site. And that's because it's expensive. And to take it a step further here in Bolton, there's no gas available at the site either. And so as we'll talk about in a minute, we're going to be utilizing a lot more electric appliances than we have in the past. So we're really excited about the opportunity that we have here to really utilize some new technology and push the boundaries of what's been done and what we've been, doing historically here in the market. Mark? So to that point, I know there's been a lot of questions, and there likely will be more, and we'll have more answers for you as we develop the project further. But certainly there's been a lot of intrigue around energy efficiency and green building. And so we wanted to include a couple of slides here that represent what we are doing here at the project, at least at the beginning, and certainly more than open to input and exploring new options and new technologies as we get further into the design. Bolton is a stretch code town. Again, I won't read each word on these slides, but to move through them, Bolton is a stretch code town, so we'll be adhering to the stretch code, which is a 10% more efficient than the IECC code. As I mentioned, so for heating and cooling, we're going to be using electric air handlers, which is different than what we've done in basically all of our developments here in Massachusetts, where gas has been the primary fuel to fuel our appliances for heat. So that is something that we're learning about. We've utilized in other markets, and we're going to research thoroughly as we further design the project, and open to input on that as well. These will have electric tank top water heaters as well. Again, back to the electric. On plumbing, low flow, low flush water sense plumbing fixtures, specified 1.28 gallons per minute for toilets, 1.0 gallons per minute for faucets, 1.5 for kitchen faucets, and 1.5 for shower heads. So very water saving fixtures, as much as we can, and leading the industry in that. Lighting will primarily be LED lighting. Where we can. Appliances, where we can, will be Energy Star. There are a few appliances like ovens and ranges and microwaves that do not offer that at the scale that we're working on, at least not yet. Windows will be operable, single hung, low E insulated glass in each unit with U value of less than or equal to 0.30. Standard glazing can have a U value of 0.48, so we're well ahead of that. And again, we can talk about this stuff in more detail in conversation after the presentation, but I want to move through this. So Mark, if you could flip.
Well, yeah, just quickly to that, there's been a few direct message questions. If you don't mind just, holding your questions till the end, you'll have an opportunity to raise your hand and ask the question versus just messaging it. Thank you.
Thanks. Next slide, please. EV charging stations. So this is becoming, as we all know, a lot more prevalent in the world with electric vehicles. Seemingly, you see more and more on the roads every day. We have now, in the past 3 or 4 developments, included EV stations in our parking garages and parking lots. We certainly intend to do that and do more of that going into the future. Our normal approach is to include some number of stations that are available on day 1 of the building opening up, and then having the site prepped with the proper electrical gear in place for future installations of more EV chargers down the road. We'll have bike racks and storage throughout the site. And then solar, because we're using electric, we're going to be exploring the use of solar on the roofs. We have utilized that in a forthcoming project in Wayland that's early under construction, so those haven't been installed yet, but that would be the first project that we've done it on in Massachusetts, and we're really excited about that. So we'll be exploring that technology further here in Bolton, and trying to figure out the best way to utilize that technology on the property as we go forward. Okay, just wanted to give you guys a sense of some comparable developments in towns nearby. So there are 2 in particular that are in towns pretty close to Bolton, one in Berlin and one in Boxborough. The one in Berlin is a little bit newer. It's called the Rockwell, just built last year with 204 units. A couple of photos underneath if you had a chance to drive by that property, or if you'd like to. That'll going to give you a good sense of scale. as well as Paddock Estates, which is in Foxborough, very nice property that was built in 2017, 244 units. So a few more units than what we're proposing here, but again, 3-story, well done property in a similar town, just on the other side of 495. So if you have a chance to drive through that property as well, I would encourage you to get a good sense of what the development might feel like. Okay, I think most importantly, what are we providing for the community? So we think there's a lot here that's being offered by this development. First and foremost, tax revenue. So, you know, we're going to be taking an underutilized site, an underoccupied office building Class A luxury apartment homes that will produce a great amount of income for the town of Bolton. Our initial projection, certainly subject to a lot more study and discussion with the assessor's office, have taxes pegged upwards of $700,000 per year. And I just would point out that, you know, whereas in other developments in towns, we're paying taxes, but we're taxing, no pun intended, a lot of the public utilities. Again, we're providing our own utilities here on site. And so we're not utilizing services, at least from the utility standpoint, in the town of Bolton. Obviously, we will be in terms of fire and emergency uses in schools and things like that, but not utilities. As we've noted, we're going to be providing high quality Class A rental housing, an option that is currently lacking in the town and also in Massachusetts in general. Anybody who's paid attention knows that we have a housing crisis in Massachusetts, and that goes for sale housing as well as rental housing. Certainly for sale housing right now is through the roof, as many of you I'm sure know and have experienced. It's very unaffordable for most people, and it's getting worse by the day. You know, we're just, as a whole, we don't build at the volume in this state that's needed to keep up with the demand, and that just drives up pricing for homes. And so you have to provide an alternative to that, and that's what we're intending to do here with Alton Easterly Valley. So who lives in these apartments? Really, the answer is everyone. You know, apartment living is for everybody. It's young couples and families who want to save to buy a home in the town of Bolton. It's for seniors and for empty nesters who want to sell their home in Bolton but stay in their community. We're seeing a lot of that these days. You know, there was this big move, and you know, it may come back when COVID is well behind us, where people were selling their homes in the suburbs and buying condominiums in the city or close into the city. And I'm sure that will still happen. But I think what we've seen in our experience, people really want to do is sell their home, which is hard to maintain, high taxes, and they want to stay close by. They may have children or grandchildren in the neighborhood or in the community. And so this provides an opportunity for them to do that and stay close by as well. I think on the business side, it's important to note that the new influx of residents who will live in this development will have disposable income. Just by the nature of the Class A housing on who will live there, there's going to be disposable income that will benefit the local businesses. And I don't think that can be underscored enough. And then I think very important to a lot of the folks watching tonight. So this project will put the town of Bolton well over their 10% affordability requirement in Massachusetts under the 40B program. All 229 units will count towards on the SHI list, which means you'll be nearly double what you need to get over that 10% cap. And so what that does is put the town in control of your own destiny going forward for a long, long time. And then finally, it's going to create jobs. So there'll be temporary jobs during construction, again, feeding the local businesses. And then there'll be permanent jobs, obviously a far lower number than 200, but there's permanent management jobs that will be on site in perpetuity. Okay, affordable housing. So we want to spend some time on talking a little bit about what that means and you know, who's living here, who will live here. Again, 25% of the, you know, per the 40B program, 25% of the units will be designated affordable for those earning up to 80% of the area median income. again, I know I've said this multiple times, all 229 units will count towards the town of Bolton subsidized housing inventory, SHI. So what is the median income? So in Eastern Worcester County, which is Bolton's part of, excuse me, it's $126,500. So who are we serving? We're serving people who work and live in your community, your teachers and other school employees, library technician, DPW staff, accounting staff at the town, the tax department at the town, conservation, police staff, fire staff, admin staff. So these are people who work and serve the town, as well as, nurses, medical assistants. So these are your neighbors. These are people who are your brothers, your sisters, sons, daughters, parents, everyday folks who are looking for a place that they can afford, that's nice and high quality, and that's what we're going to provide. We did a little bit of digging and we found that there's 25 that we could tell 25 full-time town of Bolton employees who would qualify to live in these affordable units. So I just think that puts it in perspective of who's living here. I know there's always a question of, what type of demographic is living here? Are these subsidized housing? So the rents are reduced, but folks are paying their own rent. So we're capped at what we can charge for the rent for those 25% of the units, but the folks that are qualifying and living in those units are actually paying their rent in full on their own. I think it's important to note that there's an opportunity for local preference. So you can designate up to 70% of the units for local preference. And what that means is current residents, employees of the town, employees of businesses in the town, and households who might have children who are attending schools in Bolton who don't live there currently could qualify as local preference. So what that means is we would offer those affordable units to those folks first, give them first opportunity to qualify and move in, and then we can move on to folks outside of that cohort if they're not filled up with that group of people. And then final note here on the screen. So this I pulled actually out of the Town of Bolton Housing Production Plan, which I encourage everybody to go read, and we have the URL and a couple of slides. So the population is aging in Bolton. By 2030, which believe it or not is not very far away, it's projected that between 20 and 25% of the population of the town will be age 65 plus. And that's really something. And those folks generally, are not on average making the incomes that we're seeing in younger age demographics in the town of Bolton. So it's really important that you provide housing at an affordable level. And that may be the affordable units, the 25%, or that may be the market rate units, even though those rents are much higher than the affordable restricted units. They're still a lot more affordable than buying a house for 5, 6, 7, 800,000 plus, and paying that mortgage in town and maintaining a house. So I just think that's something really important to keep in mind. Mark, if you could. Just quick, this is sort of a non-slide slide. So obviously there's going to be a lot of questions and concerns about traffic, as there always is when we're talking about new development, which is appreciated. So right now, and I'll go through in a second what the status of our application is. Right now, we're simply looking to apply to the state for eligibility for the 40B program. And so as we get past that step where we apply to the state, they issue us what's called a project eligibility letter. That gives us the ability to turn around and actually make an application for this project to the town of Bolton, which will go through the Zoning Board of Appeals. And at that point, there's certainly a requirement, and we want to do it anyway, to have a full traffic study done. So there's going to be a lot of questions about, number of car trips, should there be a light, and all that stuff that comes with it that are all great questions and valid. We don't have those answers for you tonight, but I assure you that's part of the process that will be one of the next steps that we take as we move through first to the state and then to the town application. So just a little bit about that, of where we stand and what are the next steps. So we're utilizing, or we're anticipating and hoping to utilize, the local initiative program, also known as a LIP, which is part of the 40B program. Many know it as a friendly 40B. we actually have provided our application for review by the Board of Selectmen on May 5th. So they're reviewing that. We discussed it at the hearing last week where some of you may have attended. And we are now going to be put on the agenda for May 20th, where we'll be asking the Board of Selectmen hopefully to sign, if they're comfortable, that application so that we can submit it to the state for review. So then what happens? So the Board of Selectmen would sign that application alongside us. We're co-applicants. It gets sent into the state for review and for eligibility. Just a reminder, this is not an approval. The simple, simple fact of them, the Board of Selectmen signing the application and us allowing to submit it to the state is step one of a long process. It's not an approval. DHCD, which is the entity of the state that will review the application, will then actually turn the application back to the town of Bolton for a 30-day comment period, which is kind of funny because, obviously it had been reviewed prior to submitting, but it's just the way the program works and they don't veer from those guidelines, but they shouldn't. So there'll be a 30-day comment period where different department heads, boards, and folks in the community can make written comment to the state on the project, both in support and concern for the project. DHCD will then review those comments, and then they will or they won't issue what's called a project eligibility letter. And if they do issue a project eligibility letter, all that means is they feel that the site is appropriate for development of this scale. It doesn't go into great detail. It does not talk about architecture and traffic and all that stuff that we'll go through with the ZBA. It's really a high-level check. Okay, is there any major issues? Is this site, generally speaking, a site that we feel is appropriate for housing? Okay, yes, it is. So when they issue that project eligibility letter, what that then does is it allows us to put together our application for the first time to the town of Bolton, which will be in much greater detail than what we have today. And I just want everybody to keep in mind that at that level, at that time, when we have the application ready for the Zoning Board of Appeals, many of the details and questions that we'll talk about, I'm sure after this presentation will have been flushed out further and a lot more thought through, and we'll be able to come back and have another meeting with the community and answer some of the questions that we may not be able to answer tonight. So from there, then the zoning board process plays out, which is a prescribed 180-day process where the zoning board will meet with us on several occasions, as many times as they would like. They may refer to other boards for comments and department heads and gather information from the town. And then eventually we'll work towards a comprehensive permit, hopefully. All right, housing production plan. So I probably should have moved this slide up, but just for everybody's benefit, the town of Bolton did a really great thing that not all towns do, and they don't do it as well. Was very excited to have read through the housing production plan, which was just posted in March, a couple of months ago. It can be found on the planning board's website, the URL that we have up on the screen. It does a really good job of laying out some of the challenges and the needs in the town of Bolton for housing and some of what the solutions are. And we think that our project that we're proposing really checks a lot of the boxes that were identified by the housing production plan. So kudos to the folks who put that together, and really appreciate that. I encourage everybody here on this call to go and check that out. Okay, public comment opportunity. Obviously, your first opportunity will be in a minute here to ask us questions, but I wanted to just outlay going forward what the opportunities will be for further comment. So as I mentioned, our next meeting with the Board of Selectmen will be on May 20th. I'm not sure if we've made it quite on the agenda yet, but I'm hopeful that we will. And again, that'll be the night that we'll be requesting to the board that they sign the application to the state, to DHCD. From there, as I outlined, there'll be a 30-day comment period as part of the LIP application, where folks will have an opportunity to write into the state and express their feelings and concerns. We intend then, after the issuance of our project eligibility letter, and when we're getting closer to being ready to submit to the ZBA, that we'll host another one of these community meetings where we'll again flush out in greater detail some of the questions that you all might have. And then we'll get into the Zoning Board of Appeals hearings, will there be multiple opportunities for folks in the community to attend those meetings and comment to the ZBA. Mark? So that concludes the presentation. I think it took us a little bit longer to get through it than I had hoped, but I hope and I appreciate you all bearing with us, and I hope that we have some questions. I'm sure we do. I think the way this works, Mark, right, is they're gonna click on reactions. Is that right? Where it's gonna say raise hand, and if you raise your hand, we can call on you one by one, unmute you, and you have a chance to answer your question or ask your question, excuse me. And one of us here on the development team will try to answer it the best we can. Again, I just want to make sure that folks understand sort of where we are in the process. You know, we're here tonight to listen to your input, gather comments, gather thoughts. We're gonna in great detail write down those questions and those comments. We're gonna consider everything that was said here tonight. We're going to try to answer what we can, but what we can't answer tonight, we promise you we'll get back to you with an answer when it's appropriate. So Mark, I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, we're going to start with Molly Myers.
Okay.
Hi, I just want to say you guys have done an incredible presentation. I thought it was very clear and very thorough. So I hope that there's not very many questions from people, because I hope that you've addressed most of them up front. But one question I do have, because I need access to, I have kids who are playing lacrosse. I just want to make sure, and it looks like it was possible, but that we still have access to what we call the horse ring or the sheep field, which is really old town Bolton to say that, but that's where we go to play. So I just want to make sure we still have access to that.
Yeah. Thank you, Molly. I appreciate the support and the question. So the shorter answer is yes. So that we've had, I think, 3 meetings with the Board of Selectmen, and that issue has been raised multiple times, rightfully so. It's way up on our radar. The development of the property, will disrupt the access point to those fields where they are today. We know there's a solution. We have committed on those Board of Selectmen meetings, and I'll commit tonight that we are absolutely dedicated to working collectively with the town to solve those access issues. And those relate to the zone 1 radius of the well that Phil pointed out. There can't be vehicles that drive through that zone 1 radius. And actually that's a condition that exists today that really needs to be corrected, and certainly will be something that will not be allowed when we put in further wells in the future. It's a long way to say, Molly. Yeah, we're well aware of it. We are committed to continuing to provide access to the fields. It may be different access, and again, it's going to be a collaboration between us and the town as well to try to figure out what the best way to do that is. But we have all the confidence in the world that collectively we can figure that out. So we commit to that we will absolutely make that our highest priority. Mark, you want to? I don't think people can kind of react to my answer, so I guess we'll have to keep going.
Yep. Liz Hutchins.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, perfect. So I was actually going to ask the same question as Molly, so I'm glad she brought that up, but I do have a couple more questions as well. So I'm curious what your perceived school burden is based on the number of units you have coming in. I know in one of your prior presentations that you had given to the town, you sort of had something perspective. It didn't necessarily seem applicable because the unit numbers seemed really skewed compared to what you've presented for this development. So I'm just kind of wondering where you think that would fall based on your other developments.
Yeah, that's a good question. Thank you. Yeah, we did it in one of the presentations. I can't remember which one. It may have been the first one that we gave. We used the example of Paddock Estates in Boxborough. And I think what you're alluding to is the unit mix is, I think, a little bit different maybe than what we're proposing. So it's really not a perfect science. Historically in most of our developments in other suburban towns, the number has been a lot less than people fear it might be. And I think even more so, it's very spread out. So we see folk, from pre-K and kindergarten up to high school aged. and it's generally not more than a couple of grade. I think the example, and I fear saying the wrong number, but that we use on the slide for Paddock Estates is something like 30, maybe 35. And that's a slightly bigger property, but I think had a few more one bedrooms. So it's a really difficult question to answer. I mean, will there be some children? There will be, of course. It's a desirable town. It's a very desirable school system. But really, I mean, we see such a mix of demographics living in these properties. Again, ranging all the way from young couples who may have a child or two to seniors who certainly won't have school-age children. So, and we actually think there's going to be a fair amount of seniors living in the property. So obviously that won't contribute to the school. It's not a great answer. I admit, we just don't know. But we have seen in that roughly in that range that we showed for Paddock Estates, and we can certainly do a little bit more homework on other like kind developments before we speak with you all next time. But in our experience, it's always lower than we anticipate.
Okay, thank you. And then kind of tangentially related to that, as far as percentage of units active at a given time, what have you sort of seen with your other developments? Like how full do they get? How quickly do they get full? And what kind of demand, I guess, and turnover do you have with these types of developments?
Sure. Yeah, great question. So in the sort of the industry standard, right, for full is it varies slightly, but it's generally between 90 and 95%, which we would call stabilized. And so certainly that's where we would hope the property would get to, and all of our properties thankfully have reached stabilization. It generally takes about a year. That's kind of what we say. I mean, in certain circumstances, like we had recently in Stoneham, it's gone faster. In certain circumstances, it could take a little bit longer, but we generally see anywhere from 10 to 20 units per month get rented. And so depending on the size of the property, you could do the math and figure out sort of what that length of time would be. But rule of thumb is a year plus or minus. And we definitely anticipate the property will be 90-95% occupied in due time.
Okay, I'm gonna now share it.
Hi, Sharon.
Hi. Hi, Mr. Lambert. We've spoken before, and I wanted to just reinforce the fact that you realize that we are a green community with all the costs and benefits of such a decision, and let you know that we voted in our 2018 town meeting that, and I'm going to quote you here, we will adopt, honor, and uphold the commitments of the goals enshrined in the Paris Climate Accord, will intensify efforts to meet each of our community's current climate goals, push for new action to meet the 1.5 degrees Celsius target, and work together to create a 21st century clean energy environment. In that context, I was very pleased, as were many of us, when you actually mentioned that that Woods Partners has built highly energy efficient buildings in the past, and want to encourage you to realize that in Massachusetts, we just recently passed a very stringent climate emergency bill that's calling actually for net zero buildings. And I wanted to ask you what kinds of provisions that you are considering making to make these really highly efficient buildings. Really like the idea of solar panels, and think that if the buildings are oriented properly, you could put quite a few solar panels on those roofs.
Yeah, thank you. And yes, and so we've spoken obviously prior, but also we've received, and I thank you for sending those in, questions in writing and email relating to energy efficiency as well prior to tonight's meeting. And Sharon, as we discussed, I think the question you had asked me was, do we have the right team in place who understands energy efficiency and how to best utilize those programs and those those different technologies? And and certainly the answer to that is yes. Having not designed the buildings yet tonight, it's hard to get into too much detail. Obviously, we know we're using electric versus gas. We've talked about solar. We've talked about EV. We've talked about energy efficient appliances and low flow water. I know there's a whole other host of things that were in the emails and questions that were asked of us, and we're happy to explore those. It's a balance, obviously, of pushing the limits. And it's certainly something that we want to do, is push the limits of what's been done and what can be done in the industry within reason. And we're open to all those technologies. Some of them are new to us. Some of them we know and are tried and true. But we're looking at all of those things that we can do within a reasonable approach and budget to push. Are we going to get to net zero? Honestly, probably not. But are we going to do the things that we can do within reason that are achievable in our industry? Absolutely. And we encourage and look for your help, folks who are experts about this as we further develop this project, and what are the right choices to make. Right, it's about choices. What are the right things to pick from an environmental standpoint, from a cost benefit standpoint, and we're open to all those things. And I know this is sort of a long-winded answer without listing specifics, but we're early on, as you know, and we're happy to continue to have those conversations. And as you've seen, we've come out of the gates with some ideas. I'm sure you'd like to see us push those further, and we welcome that conversation and would like to have it with you, as we go.
Thank you.
Jim, Phil's going to actually ask a question that
Sure.
that was asked directly to him.
Yeah, Jim, thank you. Mr. Andy Kishitz, excuse me if I got your name incorrect, asked me a question while I was going over the civil. I just wanted to read it into the record for you. It says, quote, "Would there be any plan to install or request a traffic signal to control enhance access onto Route 117, particularly the left-hand turn lane exiting the property?" He apologizes. He was not able to ask the question directly. He doesn't want to speak out loud to let his kids go to sleep for the night. So I thought I'd read that for him. I know you mentioned it during the traffic discussion, but if you wanted to just touch on the traffic study issue one more time for Mr. Kishitz.
Sure. Thanks, Phil. And I think I saw that question pop up along the way when you're talking. Yeah, so I don't have an answer to that other than, again, we're going to be conducting a full traffic study, which most certainly will focus on, entering and exiting the site and what kind of traffic flow that will produce and what requirements for mitigation that will require, if any. I don't know the answer to that. We've talked preliminary with our traffic engineer who will be doing the study. I think the answer is likely going to be no. It's a pretty high bar, but if it requires that, then it requires that. But we'll do that study and we'll be able to answer that question when we get to the zoning board.
Okay, Marissa?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. Great presentation. This was really interesting. I'm one of your neighbors that is directly across 117 up a little bit. And I'm one of the only owner-occupied single-family homes on that small stretch. And I'm wondering what the anticipated impacts are for this type of a development on home values, on property values within the immediate vicinity of the unit you're proposing.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Marissa. I appreciate the question. So it's a good question. It's a question that comes up all the time, and there's there's not a perfect answer for it, but I can answer it in that there's always a lot of fear, I think, in the surrounding neighborhoods about home values. And we have found those time and time again to be overblown concerns, and the reason for that is what we build. We're building high-end Class A housing. We're not prepared, obviously, to be putting out what we think the market rents will be tonight on a project that won't open its doors for a couple of years. But suffice it to say that the rents are high, and they're higher than anything that you've probably seen from I know there's not a lot of them, but a rental property in the town of Bolton. And if you go and visit Paddock Estates or the Rockwell or any of the similar properties like that, at least just look at their website, you can see what the rents are. And that just tells you the quality of the projects that are built and the quality of the resident who are choosing to live there. And I will add also that we're a professional property management firm who takes great pride in creating value and maintaining the value of our properties by maintaining the buildings and maintaining the landscaping. And so, I can't predict what will happen with home values related or unrelated to the project, but we have no evidence, and frankly, the industry doesn't have any evidence that multifamily development decreases the value of single-family homes in the nearby area. Sorry, it's weird when you can't react, but I think Mark, if we can.
No, that's good. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Oh, you can. Sorry, you can. I wasn't sure if once you get muted again that you.
Yeah, you can have to ask again.
Gotcha.
David.
Hi, this is Dave Brooksbacken. I just wanted to thank you for the presentation. It was very interesting. Really a lot of good stuff that you presented. I just wanted to mention one aspect that you may not be aware of. There are a number of local access trails all throughout the town of Bolton for the community of Bolton to enjoy and neighboring towns. I just wanted to highlight that there is an unimproved trail that I think may go through the back end or the rear end of the property. It's the Bolton Lancaster Railroad bed trail. And it's something that I've kind of mentioned in the past to the town of Bolton that they may explore, in trying to make that a more town accessible trail, much like a lot of rail trails and stuff like that throughout the state.
Right.
I don't ever envision that being like an official rail trail, but just something to maybe make note of, something that your residents could, potentially access. And, maybe you could even envision one day that provides access to the center of town without having to take a sidewalk to, along 117 to the center of town. But I thought I'd throw that out as a bullet item. I saw also that Rebecca Longaval was on this Zoom meeting, so she may have some more to add on that, but I just thought I'd quick highlight that.
Thank you, David. I was not aware of that, so I appreciate you pointing that out. We'll look into that. I'll have to identify where that is in relation to the site. Our project in Stoneham that I pointed out earlier, which is located adjacent to the Fells, has a trailhead actually that comes out right next to the property, and it's just been really an amazing amenity, both for residents of that property, but also for the town. We created access into the trailhead from the property that's open to anybody in the public, and man, that's been a really, really amazing amenity for folks, both walking, hiking, and riding mountain bikes. So we'll definitely look into that. We appreciate that.
Yeah, it's part of a historic preservation report that was generated about maybe 10 or 12 years ago. I'd be happy to share that with you and just kind of highlight, the section where that's mentioned. But it was one of the things that were kind of noteworthy of the town of Bolton and worth kind of, preserving if possible.
Sure. And if you have any information, feel free to email it to me as well. If you have my email, and I can give that out as well at the end here, but I think it was included in most of the notices of this meeting.
Yep.
And would love to see that if you have something, but we'll look into it on our own as well.
Sure, I'll email it to you. I did send you an email with some questions earlier today, so I'll send that out.
That's right. So you do have it. Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So does anyone else have any questions? I don't see any other hands raised. There we go. I don't know if it's Anthony or Tony.
It's Tony. He had emailed me a little while ago, actually. Yep.
Tony, you got to unmute.
Sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Hey, Tony, how you doing?
Good. Yeah, so I sent in a number of questions yesterday, some of which have been answered by your updated presentation today. Thank you for that. Let me just go through a few of them, and some of these include ideas maybe that might help during the design of the project. We like the idea that you said all heating, cooling, and cooking will be electric. The good thing about electricity is that you can make your own from the sun. And it says Wood Partners plans to install high efficiency heat pumps and on-demand hot water systems. So the first question, will you consider both air source and ground source heat pumps for space heating and cooling?
So, I think when you're talking about ground source, and I'm not an expert, so I apologize, but are you talking about geothermal?
Geothermal, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, that's not technology that, we're used to seeing in our industry. Not to say that it's not worth looking into, but it's not, I don't want to say an industry norm because we're sort of moving out of industry norms anyway. But, my limited understanding of it is that may be a difficult technology to apply to large scale multifamily, and I may be wrong. So what I'd say is we'll look at it, but it's, that would be certainly new to us, and I think new to this industry. And I'm not sure if the technology is there or not, at a scale to service these types of buildings. But we have folks in our team who know that a lot better than I do. And I have your question, and I absolutely will go and look for the answer and whether or not that's something that's viable.
It's one of those things where the upfront investment might be a little more, but the long-term benefits and life cycle costs are much less.
Right.
Okay, so
I think it's a great technology. Again,
and it's also much easier to do when you're redoing the whole site. So there's no disruption of existing, landscaping or roads or anything.
Right. No, understood.
Okay. Okay, so the next question is for the air source, where will you put the outdoor units located in order to minimize the effects of noise and airflow so that people can enjoy the balconies and courtyards?
Yeah, it's a mix. So as Mike too upon, and Mike, feel free to jump in, but we basically have two different types of roofs, I guess, for lack of a better term, and buildings on the site. Buildings 1 and 2 are the U-shaped buildings that have basically a pitched roof with a cutout area where units will be placed on the roof on those two buildings, whereas on buildings 3 and 4 that have a true pitch roof without a cutout in them, any units can be placed on the ground level on those buildings. Mike, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. And the reasoning is that the two smaller buildings in the back of the site, it's easier to spread out the condensing units so they're not clustered in large groups. And we've never had complaints of noise from residents. We do buffer it with landscape, so it's not an eyesore. And in the bigger buildings, honestly, there's too many of them to put on the ground. So we put those up high. But if you have been to the sites that Jim referenced, Paddock Estates and the Rockwell, you will see that there, and they're fairly well disguised. And we were there a couple weeks ago, and there was no noise, and it was nicely done. We have to plan for it carefully when they're located. but we have done it on our previous projects as well.
Okay. So the advantage of the ground source or geothermal is that there are no outdoor units. But it does need vertical closed loop bores into the ground. But the advantage of doing it from the beginning and planning for it is that you can pave over those areas, you can put parking lots over them, even buildings or courtyards that can all be buried. They last 50 years or more.
Right.
So the other question, and this is more of a suggestion, there's quite a bit of land south of buildings 2 and 4 where you're not allowed to build, or parking areas are not allowed because the clearance is required for the potable wells. So could vertical closed loop bores be installed there outside of a smaller radius to make use of that area?
Yeah,
Maybe
so
the-
I saw that question, and I think Phil, you can jump in if I'm misspeaking, but my understanding of those zone 1 areas, Tony, is that there can't be any structures put in there.
Well, these aren't structures, though. It's all underground. The well, there's no wellheads exposed. Everything is closed loop. There's no contact with the groundwater whatsoever.
Phil, do you have any?
That would be a question for the Board of Health to answer.
Yeah, Jim, if I could, I'll just jump in. Obviously, I understand what Tony is referring to regarding the geopumps. We would have to look at what the interaction is, or honestly, the lack of interaction. Obviously, the zone 1s are very, very protective in terms of pollutants. I know what you're referring to doesn't actually generate pollutants, but what we would need to ensure is that there's absolutely no interaction with groundwater. There's nothing that affects aquifer table. There's no circulation effect. Because those are all elements that'll jump out at us with Mass DEP that they will frown upon, obviously, as part of the site plan control. So I'm taking copious notes about what you're suggesting here. And obviously, if they're looking to pursue it, we can certainly delve into that a little bit further.
We've just installed in our town, and in cooperation with Harvard, about 25 individual single-family geothermal systems. And so we've interacted with the Board of Health to get permits for that. And there are clearances for distances that they have to follow. So this is just a suggestion that might allow you to make use of that ground area.
Yeah, that's Tony. Again, that's something we'll absolutely take a look at. And I do, my limited knowledge, it's a great technology. What I need to try to understand, and the team will try to look at and understand better, is it truly applicable and feasible at this scale? I don't know. But we'll take a look at it for sure.
Okay, great. So then I see that you mentioned that you're going to have ventilation to get fresh air into the units.
Correct.
Would that be heat recovery or energy recovery ventilation?
Who knows the answer? Mike, do you?
No, it will not. We use electric air handlers, and then the energy code requires mechanical ventilation to get fresh air into the units. But it goes through our heating system. We have we've explored that in the past, and what we found, and again, this is on past projects, we will do some research, that it was fairly cost prohibitive for this type of development.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, Mike, and you sound like what's the technology, Tony, that you're referring to?
Well, there's a heat exchanger between outgoing and incoming air. So instead of bringing in fresh air and throwing out all the air that you spend energy heating, it transfers the heat to the incoming air. So it's much more efficient.
Got it.
Yeah, and one thing that we encountered on the other projects is that it requires an access panel inside the unit that the residents are not crazy about.
Yeah.
But again, we'll do some research on it.
Okay. Under solar, are you going to consider any form of on-site energy storage batteries to balance the load and to tolerate the national grid outages that we have now and then?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, we have a solar consultant who we worked with on our Wayland project. And again, as I think I mentioned in the presentation, those, we're early on in the construction of that project. We're doing
Yep.
site work still, so we're a long way away from being done and installing the solar. That was not part of what we're programming in Wayland. And again, not to say that that's not something doable here. I'd have to look into what that means. I think the way we're doing it there is, I think it all goes back to the utility company, and then it's credited, I believe, which I know there's multiple different ways to do that. And so storing it on site, is something that we'll speak with the solar consultant about the feasibility of that and what that means. I don't know, but it's something on our list as well.
Is there any more detail on what you're doing with Wayland that you could share with us, like some of the ideas that are being considered, or trade studies or anything like that?
We could share with you the program that we're installing. Again, it's a step one, Tony, to be honest. I mean, it's the first time we have done solar. And we're excited about it, but we're hoping to expand, our offering of what that looks like even in Wayland. So we could share with you what we're going to be proposing. I'm sorry, not proposing, building in Wayland, and that's all gone through the public process. So you can see how that system works. I think it's pretty straightforward. But yeah, we'd have no problem sharing with you what we're intending to build there. And
Okay, great.
We'll be building there, I should say.
So I have the same question I asked about the land that's clearance for the potable wells. Could ground mount PV solar arrays be placed there? Again, it's not roads, or it's not anything that's going to leak or pollute the ground or anything like that.
Tony, we'll have to check on that.
Yeah,
My
okay.
my understanding is that anything in the zone 1 has to relate to the water source. And that would not, so.
Yeah,
that,
okay.
I think too, Tony, I think we're going to have ample opportunity on the rooftops, given the size of these buildings, to do what we need to do. But certainly if we don't, we can look at that as well, and whether it's even allowed. But if it is, we'll have to assess, what the needs are to go beyond the rooftops.
Yeah, okay. Are you going to follow any standards like leadership, energy, and environmental design?
No, we haven't built a lead, project, in a certainly suburban setting. We built lead projects around the country in more urban environments. That's not something that's generally done in these types of projects. We obviously have the stretch energy code. We've looked at there's other different scales that we have utilized in the past. I think it's the green building code. I'm not getting that right, in Wayland, that we're utilizing. Somebody knows the name of that on our team. You can jump in.
Yeah, National Green Building Standard.
National Green Building Standard we use in Wayland. So, the technologies that we're talking about utilizing today, whatever ends up being in the project, I think will push the energy efficiency, of these buildings up into, those ranges. But LEED is generally not something that we've pursued on these types of buildings.
Okay. Are there going to be elevators of any kind?
No, these are walk-up buildings.
Okay. Are there going to be basements?
No, there's no basements. They're slab on grade.
Slab, okay. All right, that's all the questions. I had others, but you have them in writing, so.
Yeah, we have them, and I actually have them right in front of me, Tony. And so, there's a fair amount here that are all really good questions and suggestions, and we assure you we're going to go through those between now and the time that we talk to you again.
Very good, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We appreciate your time.
Chris?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes. How you doing, Chris?
Very well, thank you. I guess a couple comments. I was going to ask the same thing about the elevators. You were going to encourage seniors to move in Honestly, we have a master on the second floor. I think as we get older, that will become an issue, getting up and down the stairs. So the fact that there's no elevators here, for me personally, it might be a deal breaker. I'm trading stairs for stairs, but just a comment. The other thing is, I love my garage. I never brush snow off my car. I never get wet when it rains. It's you just get used to your garage. And the fact that you only have 28 units and everything else is open, you're now saying as a senior, after I go down a couple flights of stairs, I got to go out and clear a foot of snow off of my car. Again, a non-starter.
Yeah, Chris, thank you for the comments and good comments. And I understand where you're coming from. Given that these are 3-story buildings and we're proposing 230 units, right? So a third of those units will be on the first floor. And so certainly if seniors don't want to be in a unit on a second floor, or certainly not on a third floor, there's going to be ample opportunity to rent on a first floor unit in one of these 4 buildings. So I think we can accommodate folks who do not want to use stairs, certainly. To your question on or comment on garages, look, we would certainly love to have a garage for every unit in the project. That's really an issue of land availability. It's not really a choice of ours. We would put more in if we could. It's just the site does not allow for us to install more than what we're showing, because I promise you, we understand that concern, and the market speaks. In our other properties, every one of those garages that we build gets leased, and people love them. It is, if you're moving from a single family home, it's absolutely something you're used to, and you probably don't want to not get used to. We're very limited on the site where we can put those garages. We'll continue to explore it, because we're not fighting you on that comment. We would love to have more as well. It's just more a function of how the site lays out.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Liz again.
Hi, I'm back.
Hi, Liz.
So a couple questions, kind of going off that garage question, and I'm not sure if our design review board would necessarily be cool with this, but have you guys considered solar canopies for the parking areas? Because it's not a garage, but it could kind of help alleviate some of that.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Those do an okay job, right? They're certainly not fully enclosed. So, we haven't done those before. And, in terms of the solar, the use of solar on them, we, again, as I said to Tony, I think we're going to have ample opportunity to site solar on the site. So I don't know that we'll need it for that. But in terms of coverage, I don't know. We could look at those. I don't know if they're really going to solve that issue. You get snow no matter what. I don't really know how much space they take up. The problem with the garages is, you can really only put them on the edges, and they take up more space. They're deeper than a regular parking space. So it's something we can look at, certainly, and I appreciate the suggestion. I think, we'll just continue to look at the site plan as we get more developed and see if there's any opportunities to put more garages, because we're very much in favor of that if we can find room.
Yeah. And then I may have missed this, but did you guys mention anything about whether or not there would be any sort of standby generation, like for this unit, i.e. if the power goes out, is the whole entire unit out?
No, we didn't mention that. No, we generally don't have, we usually have generators for like elevators when we have elevators, but we don't have full building backup power. That's not something that we've done before. I'm not sure whether that's possible or not, but I guess somebody in our team could probably tell us if it is or why it's not.
I think that's something we'll have to look into, Jim. We do have standby power. We're required to for the wastewater and fire
Mhm.
protection and the
Right.
pumps, the sewer pumps
Yep.
related to that, but we don't currently have it in the buildings.
Okay, I'm just wondering from a noise perspective of just, generators going off periodically. Obviously, if they're, they have to be tested periodically and all of that.
Sure.
Is just where
Right.
that question was coming from. And then my last question, and I'm wondering what in Massachusetts, which project has been logistically most challenging for you and why you considered it a challenging project?
Ooh, great question. All of these projects are challenging, but I think, I'd say the project that I showed in Walpole, if you have a chance to kind of just Google it or go there, you'll see what I'm talking about, and that we built it literally in a single family neighborhood. It was permitted by another group, and we purchased it after it was permitted, but it's a unique circumstance where you have Route 1, which is heavily commercial, and then it's got 95 on the other side, and there's this real small pocket of single family homes where this project was permitted. And so, we were building a large scale projects, of this ilk in people's neighborhood, truly in their neighborhood. And so, in terms of number of hours of operation and how we had to keep the site clean, and that was really difficult. It turned out really well. And I think folks in town would tell you the same in terms of the lack of complaints that we received. We were really nervous that was going to be a very difficult project to build without disrupting people's lives. And we were able to do it, I think, as well as we could have. So that one was very challenging in that regard. I mean, they all have their own challenges. Some of them are, topography. Some of them are utilities. Some of them are easements. Some of them are, tight locations next to neighbors or other buildings. So, I mean, that's one of the things we love about the business. It's, every project is unique and has its own challenges and solutions. But I'd say, top of my head, that Walpole one in the neighborhood was difficult, and we navigated that pretty well.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I think my concern, like the first thing as a resident of Bolton that kind of jumps to my head with this project and the location is the traffic situation on 117, which obviously I won't beat that dead horse because I think we all realize that that's something that needs to be addressed. But, that road just gets nuts during rush hour in the afternoon. So thinking about, trying to get my kids to sports and everything, I'm definitely concerned about that. So, but
yeah, we very much understand and appreciate that concern. And, like I said, we're going to study that. I also have young children who actually, I don't live in Bolton, but I live out this way, and my kids play soccer in Lancaster. And so often we actually go through Bolton to get there. So I've seen it firsthand. I think why we believe this is an appropriate location for this type of housing, and I think which is echoed by the housing production plan, is obvious, right? It's the location adjacent to 495. And so while yes, we're on 117 and that's unavoidable, we'd like to think that the fact that we're so close to the on and off ramps of 495 will mitigate that issue as best as possible. Will it eliminate it? No, certainly not. But of all the locations that you could think of in town, we believe that this is the most appropriate for this type of housing. But that's definitely something we're going to study and I'm sure discuss a lot with folks along the way.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
Any other questions? Dick, I see you're doing it on the video.
I'm sorry, Mark, what did you say?
No, Dick's just raising his hand. There you go.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. Hey, Dick, how you doing?
Good. You guys did a great job. I'm really impressed. This is a project, in my opinion, that we need very badly in town. I'm a strong supporter of it. I would make two suggestions in your presentation that you might want to consider. Number one, I was very pleased to see that the architectural drawings are a style that is more conducive to Bolton architecture than the picture that was on the front cover of the brochure.
Yep.
And I was pleased to see you made that change, and you might want to change the picture on the front cover so that it was, the first impression is a much better impression than the one that's presented with that, with the building that's there today. My second suggestion is, you've indicated that this project is worth about $700,000 a year to the town. I think when you add in excise taxes from automobiles, which is considerable, and I did have a quick chance to look at your pro forma, you're talking close to $1 million impact to the town. And I know you want to be conservative, but I think that's a very powerful message that you should focus on, $1 million project per year to the town.
Yeah, thank you. And well, to your first comment, there's a certain member of my team who will have a laugh about that tomorrow. He told me to change that picture yesterday, I think. So
Smart man.
So yeah, I didn't know. Certainly don't want to be misleading, and that's obviously just an example of something we have built, not at all an interpretation of what we intend to build here. We're very sensitive, Dick, to the aesthetic in Bolton. And you know, we want to as closely as we can adhere to that and respect that the style of the community, and not try to build something at all that's out of place. So I appreciate that comment, and please know that that's something that we have put thought into, and we'll put a lot more thought into, obviously, as we go further along. And on your second comment, yeah, no, I mean, you're right. We didn't include, any thought on excise taxes, and I think we probably are being conservative in that regard. Always want to under promise and over deliver. But you're right. I mean, it's more than likely $1 million, to the plus to the town, and so there's a ton of value there. Like I said, I mean, we see, number one, the opportunity to provide a diversity of housing types to folks who are looking for it in town, tax revenue, and then obviously to close the loop for the town on future 40B projects for a long time. And we just think there's a lot of benefits to the project, to the town. So we appreciate your comments.
Chris again. Don't have a last name.
Yeah, I just can't help but wonder how much of that $1 million would go towards educating the kids that move in. So, it's not $1 million that, that we get to spend in a lot of different places. It probably will go towards schools.
Yeah, Chris, thank you. I mean, obviously, I don't have the answer to where the money gets spent. I think, there will be some children in the development. Again, to the question earlier, we think it'll be less than most anticipate. I certainly don't think, the school children produced by the development will offset the benefit or even close to it, but your point's taken.
Tony?
Yes, again, as everyone has said, great job on the preparation here and on the presentation. Is it going to be available in PDF or PowerPoint?
Sure. Yeah. So a couple of things, Tony. Yeah, we can make it available. And I think we could probably provide it to the town to post on the website, but also I know that Bolton Access TV is recording this presentation tonight, and it will make available, I think, on YouTube for viewing as well.
Very good. Thank you.
That's like all the questions. If there's any final. Nope. Okay.
Sorry, muted myself again there. There's no more questions. Well, thank you all very much. I mean, this is a great conversation. We really appreciate everybody's input, thoughts, and questions. We're obviously, we have a lot to consider and a lot to incorporate in the project going forward. A lot of ideas to explore and evaluate. So we very much look forward to advancing the design here and speaking with you all again in the future. As a reminder, the next time you'll see us is on the 20th at the Board of Selectmen, if you'd like to join that meeting. And then, in the future, we, it's certainly way too early to put a date on it, but after we receive an eligibility letter from the state, which can take a couple of months, and then we get to work on the Zoning Board of Appeals application for a comprehensive permit. When we get to that level of detail, we're going to host another one of these meetings, which, we'll obviously be able to provide a lot more detail and a lot more answers at that point in time. So we appreciate your patience with us tonight for not having all the answers. Hopefully we answered what we could, and we appreciate everybody's thoughts again. And thank you very much for your time, and we'll see you soon.